Ray retired on a Friday, and on Monday morning, he did the most radical thing in modern American finance. Nothing. He poured his coffee, watered his tomatoes, and never once opened an app to check what the market did overnight. Because it didn't matter. Ray worked 41 years at one company and on the first of every month. The same $3,200 lands in his account whether the market's on fire or on the floor. His daughter Kara works at that same company now. And last night at 11:14 p.m., she was lying in bed refreshing a balance on her phone, watching $4,000 evaporate while she was supposed to be asleep. Same family, same building, same work ethic. One of them got a check for life, the other got a second unpaid job as her own personal pension fund manager, and nobody asked if she wanted it. My name is Nick, and today we're figuring out what actually happened to your retirement account. Because I promise you, it wasn't the crash you think it was. Now, here's the strange part. If you read the headlines this year, retirement in America is booming. And I mean the numbers genuinely look incredible. Vanguard just put out its annual report where it x-rays the real accounts of nearly 5 million people, and it found that a record 86% of workers are now putting money into their retirement plans. 25 years ago, that was closer to 65%. The average savings rate hit an all-time high of about 12%, and the average account balance climbed to around $168,000. So on paper, the machine is working. Everybody's saving, everybody's participating, the balances are up. Roll the triumphant music. Except that $168,000 average is doing something sneaky. See, the average adds everyone's balance together and divides by the number of people, which means it gets yanked upward by a small group of folks sitting on enormous piles of money. It's like if you and I are standing in an empty room and Jeff Bezos walks in. On average, the three of us are worth about $70 billion each. Congratulations, statistically, you're a titan of industry. In reality, you're checking whether that room has free snacks. So if you want the honest number, you don't look at the average. You look at the median, the person standing dead center, exactly as many people above them as below. And the median retirement balance is not $168,000, it's about $44,000. That's not a typo. The typical American is sitting on roughly a quarter of what the cheerful headline promised, and that gap right there between the story and the statement is the whole video. So let's answer the actual question. What happened to your retirement account? And the answer is going to annoy you, because it didn't happen this year. It happened in 1978, and you're only feeling it now. Here's the thing almost nobody knows. The 401k was an accident. It was never designed to be the thing your entire old age hangs on. Back in 1978, Congress passed a boring tax bill, and buried in it was a little subsection numbered 401k meant to let executives defer a slice of their bonuses from taxes. That's it. That was the whole ambition. Then a benefits consultant named Ted Benna was messing around with that subsection in 1980 and realized you could use it to build a workplace savings plan where regular employees kicked in their own money. He later said he thought it would be a nice little supplement, a garnish, a side dish next to the main course, which back then was the pension. And that's the part that matters. Because your grandparents' retirement wasn't a side dish. Raise isn't either. It's a pension. A defined benefit, which is a fancy way of saying the company promised him a specific check for life and the company carried all the risk of making that promise come true. If the market crashed, that was the company's problem. If Ray lived to 103 out of pure spite, that was the company's problem. In 1980, almost 4 in 10 private sector workers had one of these. Today, it's closer to 1 in 10, and most of those are teachers, cops, and government workers. For everyone else, the pension didn't get improved. It got deleted, and the accidental little side dish got promoted to the entire meal. And here's what actually happened to your account, the real WTF. Nobody sat you down and explained that a job had quietly changed hands. Running a pension is a genuine profession. It takes people who understand market cycles, who calculate how long thousands of humans will live, who decide exactly how much to set aside and when to move it somewhere safe. That entire job got laid off and handed to you. Unpaid, untrained, on top of your actual job. You're now the fund manager, the actuary, and the risk department for a single client whose whole retirement depends on you not screwing it up between your kids' dentist appointments. Kara didn't apply for that role, she got voluntold. So let me show you the 3 risks that got dumped in Kara's lap, because this is where it stops being abstract and starts being terrifying. The first one is called Sequence of Returns Risk, and it's the quiet assassin of retirements. Picture 2 people who both retire on the exact same day with the exact same $500,000, both planning to pull out $40,000 a year to live on. The only thing different between them is timing. The first guy retires straight into a crash. His $500,000 drops to $300 almost overnight, and he still has to pull his $40,000 out to eat, so now he's selling shares at the bottom just to buy groceries. $300 becomes $240, $240 becomes $180, and the account never gets a chance to heal, because every single year he's carving another chunk out of a shrinking pile. He's flat broke by 78. The second person retires into a couple of calm years first, watches her account drift up to $600,000 before the identical crash ever lands, rides it out, and dies with more than she started with. Same $500,000, same average return, same spending. The only difference was which years showed up first, something neither of them chose and neither of them could see coming. Kara's neighbor learned this the hard way, retiring in early 2008, selling into the teeth of it, and unretiring back to a job at 70. When Ray had a pension, this risk simply did not exist for him. Now it's sitting on your nightstand. The second risk robs you so slowly you'll never feel the hand in your pocket. Fees, a fee sounds harmless. Somebody says your fund charges 1% and your brain goes, 1%, who cares, rounding error. Here's why that's the most expensive shrug of your life. That 1% doesn't come out once. It comes out every year off your entire balance for 40 years, including on all the growth you'd have earned on the money it already took. Run the math on a career of saving, and a 1% fee can quietly eat roughly a quarter of your final nest egg. A quarter. You did all the saving, you took all the market risk, you sweated every crash, and a quarter of the reward walks out the door to pay for management you never met. You essentially bought a stranger a very nice boat, one tiny invisible sliver at a time, and you're not even invited on it. And, the truly diabolical part is how well it hides. Kara will never get a bill, there's no line item, no statement that says, by the way, this fund quietly cost you tens of thousands over your career, thanks. It just comes out smoothly, in the background, off the top, so quietly that the only way she'd ever notice is if she went looking for a number nobody ever told her to look for. A crash at least makes the news. This just erodes you in total silence. And the third risk is the most human one, and honestly the most unfair to blame people for. It's behavior. There's a research firm called Dalbar that does this study every year, comparing what the average investor actually earns versus what their own funds earned. And year after year, the investor loses to their own investments. Not by a little, by a lot, over time. How is that even possible? How do you underperform the thing you own? Simple, you're a person. The market drops 20%, your brain screams that this time it's different, and you sell at the bottom to make the pain stop. Then you wait until it feels safe again, which is always after prices have already gone back up, and you buy back in high. Buy high, sell low, repeat, apologize to your future self. And you can see this happening right now in the data. Hardship withdrawals, where people yank money out of their 401k early and eat the penalty just to survive an emergency, just hit a record, roughly triple what they were before the pandemic. About 1 in 8 people have a loan out against their own retirement account. That's not gambling. That's people borrowing from their 70-year-old self to pay their 35-year-old electric bill. Because the account was never actually extra. It was the only cushion they had. And there's a fourth thing eating your account that doesn't even show up as a loss. Inflation. Over the last handful of years, prices in America went up more than 20%. So picture Kara's balance holding perfectly steady, not dropping a dollar. She feels fine, she's not fine. Standing completely still, her money quietly lost a fifth of what it could actually buy. It's why the $1 million retirement is a bit of a ghost now. A million sounds like the finish line, the number that means you made it, but a million today buys what a much smaller pile bought your parents, and by the time a lot of you get there, it'll buy less still. The target keeps moving, and nobody updated the poster on the wall. So here's a fair question. If your own account is this shaky, why not just lean on Social Security? And this is where I have to be careful, because I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what politicians will do, but here's what the program's own trustees are saying. On its current path, the main Social Security trust fund is projected to run short around the year 2033. That doesn't mean the checks stop. It means that unless Congress acts, the money coming in only covers something like 3/4 of the promised benefits, which would translate into an automatic cut of very roughly 20% across the board. Now, historically, Congress has always patched this thing before the deadline, and they very well might again. But notice the pattern. The pension, which the company guaranteed, became the 401k, which you guarantee, and the backup, which the government guaranteed, is now flashing a maybe. Ray's generation got the pension and the Social Security check both, belt and suspenders. Kara's being handed a needle and told to sew her own belt, and just sort of hope the suspenders are still there in 2033. The floor keeps quietly getting moved down a level, and the memo keeps not getting sent. And here's the good news buried in all of this, because not everyone gets hurt the same way, and the news never bothers to tell you which one you are. So find yourself on this map. If you're in your 20s and the market just fell 20%, that is not a disaster happening to you. That's a sale. You've got 30 plus years of buying ahead of you, and every share the crash marks down is a share you scoop up cheap and hold for decades. For you, a crash is a coupon. If you're in your 40s or 50s, you're in the dangerous middle, old enough to have a real balance to lose, but young enough that time can still bail you out. Which means the only thing that actually hurts you here is panic selling at the bottom and freezing your contributions out of fear. And if you're in your late 50s or 60s. That sequence of returns assassin we just met is no longer a hypothetical. It's your literal next few years, and you're the one group that genuinely has to think hard about timing. Same headline, same red number, 3 completely different meanings depending on where you're standing. So the panic is not one size fits all, no matter how the news screams it at you. But I'd be lying if I stopped there, because there's a third group nobody puts on the graphic, and it's the biggest one. For a huge slice of Americans, roughly 4 in 10 adults, there is no red number at all. Not because they're calm, because there's no account. Nothing to crash, nothing to refresh at midnight, nothing to withdraw from in an emergency except a credit card. When the story of retirement got quietly rewritten from a promise the company kept into a project you have to fund yourself, an enormous number of people simply never got the resources to start the project. And that's the part that should make all of us stop treating this like a personal failing. And here's the part I want to sit with, because it's tempting to watch all this and go looking for a villain. Some greedy executive who decided to steal your pension. But that's not really what happened, and pretending it is just makes you angry at the wrong thing. What actually happened is quieter and more unsettling. A whole series of reasonable sounding decisions made by a lot of different people over 40 years, each one defensible on its own, added up to an entire nation being handed a job they were never trained for and never told they'd taken. Nobody stole your retirement. They just very politely handed you the wheel of a bus doing 70 and went to sit in the back. And the reason I'm obsessed with how this machine works is that once you can see the wheels in your hands, you can start driving. And that's genuinely why I built a school community. Because the single most reliable way I've watched regular people claw back control isn't picking magic stocks. It's building an income they own and understand. And for a lot of people, that's meant starting a faceless YouTube channel, which is exactly the thing I break down step by step in there. I share the whole playbook I've used across multiple successful channels, from picking a niche to scaling it, completely free, no catch. So if this video is making you want to actually do something instead of just doom scroll your balance at midnight like Kara, the link is down in the description. Come say hi. Here's the part the doom headlines always skip. You control far more of this than they ever let on, and the first lever is so obvious it's almost embarrassing. And yet, people leave it sitting on the table every single day. The employer match. If your company matches your contributions and you're not putting in enough to grab all of it, you are turning down a 50 to 100% instant return on your money. That's not a good investment. That's the only guaranteed one that exists. Refuse it, and you have voluntarily taken a pay cut to feel financially responsible. Let me make that real for a second. Say Kara earns $60,000 and her company matches the first few percent she puts in. That's a couple $1,000s a year of somebody else's money, free, that she either takes or leaves on the table. Leave it there across a whole career, and with decades of growth on top, she didn't skip a small bonus. She skipped the down payment on a house. That's the real price of not filling out one form. So get the match. All of it. Today, next, go hunt down your fees, because remember, that's the quiet quarter walking out the door. Log in, find the expense ratio on whatever you're invested in, and if it's up around 1%, look at whether a plain, boring index fund charging basically nothing gets you the same thing. That single swap can hand you back years of retirement. Then, automate your contributions and turn on the setting that bumps them up by 1% every year. You will not feel a 1% nudge. Your future self will feel it like a lottery ticket. And if you happen to be over 50, the tax code lets you throw in thousands extra every year in catch-up contributions, and there's now an even bigger super catch-up window in your early 60s. Ray never needed any of these levers because someone else pulled them for him. You've got them all, and they're just sitting there waiting. And the last one is the hardest because it's the behavior one. When the market drops and every cell in your body is begging you to sell and make it stop, the move is to do the single most difficult thing in all of investing. Nothing. The Rays of the world win by ignoring the noise on purpose. You have to build that same ignoring on purpose, automate everything so your worst 2 a.m. Instincts never get their hands on the wheel and just keep buying through the ugly years. The people who win at this are almost never the smartest ones in the room. They're the ones who set up a boring system early and then refused to touch it when it got scary. So think back to Ray drinking his coffee, gloriously not caring what the market did overnight, and Kara wide awake watching a number bleed. Here's the twist that took me a while to see. Kara is not actually worse off than her dad. She's just carrying a job he never had to. And the exact same redesign that dumped all this risk onto her also handed her a set of controls Ray never got. She can choose her own fees, she can capture that free match. She can quietly buy the whole crash on sale while her neighbors panic. And if she starts young and automates the boring stuff, she can end up at 70 doing the exact thing her dad does now, pouring her coffee, watering her tomatoes, ignoring the market on purpose, except the number she gets to ignore is bigger than any pension ever promised him, and every dollar of it is hers. What happened to your retirement account wasn't the crash. It was a job that got handed to you in 1978 without so much as an email. And the good news, the only news that actually matters, is that once you know you're holding the wheel, you get to decide where the bus goes. That's the whole game. If you want the playbook for building income you actually own, our school community is in the description. I'll see you in the next one.